He didn't cheat the way most people cheat. No messy texts, no lipstick on a collar, no late night calls with flimsy excuses. He cheated like a man who had practice, like a man with a system, like a man who had been doing this long enough to make betrayal look normal. And I didn't find out because I was suspicious. I didn't find out because I went through his phone. I found out because I was standing in a grocery store on a random Saturday morning, half asleep, staring at a box of cereal. And then I looked up, and there he was, with his wife, with his kids, and with a wedding ring he had been taking off every time he came to see me. My name is Lauren. I'm 29 years old, and for a year and a half, I thought I was dating a man who traveled a lot for work. Turns out I wasn't his girlfriend. I was his work trip. I met Mark at a coffee shop near my office. It wasn't romantic in the movie kind of way. There was no dramatic music, no spilled coffee, no slow motion eye contact. I was just tired. That kind of tired where your face gives up before your body does. I was standing in line, checking emails on my phone, trying to decide whether a second coffee would help me survive the day or just make me anxious faster. Mark was behind me. When my name was called, he stepped aside and said, casually, "Go ahead, you look like you've had a week." I laughed because he was right. I had. And that was the first thing that worked on me. He didn't try too hard. He didn't do the loud flirting thing. He didn't make some ridiculous comment about my smile. He didn't act like a man performing confidence for an audience. He just talked to me like I was a real person with a real life, not a target. We stood by the pickup counter for maybe 5 minutes. He asked what I did. I asked what he did. He said he worked in regional operations for a logistics company. It sounded boring enough to be true. Before he left, he gave me his number. Not in a pushy way. He wrote it on the back of a receipt and said, "Dinner this week? No pressure." No pressure. I remember thinking that phrase sounded so safe. That was the word I used in my head after our first date. Safe. Then healthy. Then mature. Those words became the story I told myself about him. He texted once the next morning, not 10 times, not with weird intensity, not with some fake good morning beautiful routine that felt copied and pasted. Just one message. Hope your day is better than yesterday. Dinner Thursday? I liked that. I liked that he remembered. I liked that he didn't chase. I liked that he gave me space and still made me feel chosen. Our first date was simple. Italian restaurant, corner booth, one glass of wine each. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. When I told him my father had died when I was younger, he didn't rush to say the perfect thing. He just got quiet for a second and said, "That must have changed everything." It did. And the fact that he understood that without turning it into a performance made me trust him faster than I should have. The first few months felt easy. He remembered details. He knew how I took my coffee. He knew I hated being called sweetheart by strangers. He knew I watched bad reality TV when I was stressed and pretended it was ironic. He planned dates, not extravagant dates, not Instagram dates, real dates. Dinner after work, Sunday brunch, a walk by the river when the weather was nice, a movie he pretended not to like, then quoted 3 days later. He didn't disappear for days. He didn't make me beg for attention. He was consistent when he was there. And that when he was there part is what I didn't question fast enough. Mark worked for work. That was his story from the beginning. He worked in regional operations, which meant he had to visit different branches, check in with teams, put out fires, handle audits, sit in meetings, and do whatever else people with vague corporate titles do when they want you to stop asking questions. Every few weeks, he'd be gone. 2 nights, 3 nights, sometimes almost a full week. But he never acted shady about it. That was the part that fooled me. He didn't vanish and then come back with excuses. He told me ahead of time. Dallas Monday through Wednesday. Chicago next week. Back late Thursday. Conference in Denver. Kill me now. He complained about airport food. He sent photos of hotel room views. Once, he sent me a picture of a work badge on a hotel desk beside a laptop and a half empty coffee cup. It looked real. It looked normal. And when someone's lie looks normal, you stop looking for cracks. He also had rules. Not strict rules, not rules that sound controlling, soft rules. The kind that sound reasonable when you're falling for someone and trying not to look insecure. He didn't post on social media. Privacy, he said. I don't like putting my relationships online. It makes people weird. I believe that. Honestly, part of me respected it. He didn't bring me to work events. Office politics, he said. People gossip. I don't mix business and personal. I believed that too. He didn't rush introductions to family. We're not there yet, he said. I don't want to move too fast and mess something good. That one almost made me trust him more because I had dated men who rushed things just to create fake closeness. Mark seemed careful, thoughtful, measured. And I thought careful meant serious. I thought slow meant respectful. I thought privacy meant maturity. That's the trap. When you decide not to need proof, you sometimes hand the wrong person permission to lie. After about 6 months, I started noticing things. Small things. Not enough to accuse, just enough to feel slightly off. He never stayed at the same hotel twice. At least not that I knew of. He never called me early in the morning when he was traveling. He would text, but calls were usually late afternoon or after dinner. He never FaceTimed. He said hotel Wi-Fi was terrible. He said he hated video calls. He said he looked exhausted and didn't want me seeing him like that. Regular calls were fine, though. Always regular calls. Always voice only. He never let me pick him up from the airport. Too chaotic, he'd say. I'll just Uber. He never let me send anything to his home address. I'm barely there, he said. It'll sit outside. Just give it to me when I see you. And the biggest one, the one I talked myself out of every time, was this. He never let me fully into his schedule. I could reach him some hours, not others. On certain nights, he'd go quiet for stretches that didn't match just working late. But every time I got close to saying something, he would do something that pulled me back. He'd show up with my favorite takeout. He'd remember some tiny detail from a conversation weeks earlier. He'd look at me like I was the only calm part of his life. One time, he got sick. A bad flu. He showed up at my apartment looking exhausted, pale, almost embarrassed. I made him soup. I put a blanket over him on the couch. I checked his temperature like I knew what I was doing. At one point, half asleep, he reached for my hand and said, I don't like being taken care of, but I like it when it's you. That sentence did damage. Because intimacy like that makes you ignore the gaps. You tell yourself a man wouldn't say something that vulnerable if he were lying. But that's not true. Some people use vulnerability the way others use perfume, just enough to leave a trace, just enough to make you remember them softer than they deserve. So I stayed. I waited. I told myself I was being patient, not foolish. I told myself I was secure, not naive. I told myself that a good relationship didn't need constant proof. And maybe that's true. But a good relationship also doesn't make you feel like you're standing outside a locked house being told you're already inside. One night, Mark called from one of his trips. His voice was low, tired, normal. He said that he had been in meetings all day. He said the hotel restaurant was terrible. He said he missed sleeping beside me. And then I heard it. Kids. Not loud, not close, but unmistakable. The specific sound of children. A small voice. Movement. A little burst of laughter. The kind of background noise that doesn't belong in a quiet hotel room. I froze. Where are you? I asked. He didn't pause. That's what scared me later. He didn't pause. He said, easy as breathing, hotel lobby, family checking in nearby. Family checking in nearby. He said it so smoothly, I almost believed him. Almost. But my body didn't. My body reacted before my mind gave it permission. My stomach tightened. My hands went cold. I sat up straighter on my couch, like I could hear better if my spine was more honest than my heart. Oh, I said. That was all. Just, oh. He ended the call quickly after that. Said he had to go upstairs, said his phone was about to die, said he'd call me tomorrow. I sat there for a long time, phone in my lap, telling myself not to be paranoid. My stomach didn't agree. A few weeks later, on a random Saturday morning, I went to the grocery store near my apartment. There was nothing special about that day. No dramatic storm, no strange feeling, no sign from the universe. I was half awake, wearing leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, no makeup, hair pulled back badly, just trying to get through my list. Eggs, coffee, spinach, toothpaste, cereal. That was all. I was standing in the cereal aisle, staring at a box like it owed me an explanation. I remember holding two different brands and not being able to decide. That's how ordinary the moment was. That's what I hate about it. Life-changing things don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they happen under fluorescent lights between cornflakes and granola bars. I looked up, and there he was. Mark, pushing a cart. Not in work clothes, not alone, not rushed. He was wearing a gray hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. Weekend clothes. Comfortable clothes. The kind of clothes a man wears when he belongs exactly where he is. And next to him was a woman. Mid-30s, calm, pretty in a quiet way. Her hair was pulled into a loose ponytail. She wore no makeup either. On her left hand was a wedding ring. A real one. Not hidden, not removed, not complicated. A wedding ring. In the cart sat a little boy, kicking his feet against the metal bars. Beside the cart walked a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, one hand resting on the side like it was her responsibility to keep the whole family moving in the right direction. My brain started making excuses immediately. Maybe that's his sister. Maybe he's helping a friend. Maybe those are his niece and nephew. Maybe I'm about to embarrass myself in public. Maybe this is not what it looks like. Then the little boy looked up at Mark and said, clear as anything, "Daddy, can we get the dinosaur cereal?" Daddy. That word hit me so hard, I felt it physically. Mark laughed. Not a fake laugh. The real laugh. The one I knew. The one I had heard in my kitchen, in my bed, in my car, over dinner. He said, "Ask your mom." The woman smiled and said, "Pick one." And then Mark leaned over and kissed her on the forehead. Not a friendly kiss, not a polite kiss, not a brotherly kiss. A married kiss. A Sunday morning kiss. The kind of kiss that belongs to a life built over years. My hands started shaking. I backed up slowly behind a display of breakfast bars. It was ridiculous, honestly. Like hiding behind a cardboard stand could protect me from the truth. Like if I moved carefully enough, reality would rearrange itself. But it didn't. Reality stood there in front of me, pushing a grocery cart. And then, because life has no mercy, the woman looked up. Her eyes found me. And here's the thing that still keeps me up at night. She didn't look confused. She didn't look suspicious. She didn't look like a woman seeing a stranger in a grocery aisle. She looked like a woman who had been told what I looked like. She looked directly at me. And then she lifted her hand and gave me a small, calm wave. Like we were neighbors. Like two women who saw each other at school pickup. Like she wasn't waving at the woman her husband had been seeing for 18 months. Half by reflex, stunned and completely frozen, I lifted my hand back. I don't know why. Maybe because my body was still trying to behave politely while my life was cracking in half. Then I turned around, walked out of the aisle, left my cart exactly where it was, and went straight to my car. I sat there, shaking for 10 minutes, maybe more. I didn't cry at first. That came later. At first, I just stared through the windshield at people walking in and out of the store with bags of groceries, like the world had the nerve to continue. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Mark. "Miss you. Crazy week. Work trip again Monday." Work trip. I stared at those two words until they stopped looking like words. Work trip. That was what he called it. That was what I had been. Not love, not a relationship, not even a mistake. A scheduled destination. A place he went when he needed to step out of his real life. Something inside me went cold. Very cold. Not numb, clear. That night, Mark called. Warm voice. Normal voice. Hey, babe. I sat on the edge of my bed with my phone in my hand and said, "Where are you right now?" He laughed softly. "Hotel. Long day." I closed my eyes. Even after everything, hearing him lie that easily still hurt. I said, "Mark, are you married?" Silence. Not confusion. Silence. Then he tried confusion anyway. "What? Lauren, where is this coming from?" "Are you married?" Not a question anymore. Another pause. Then he said, "It's complicated." I laughed. Once. Sharp. Because there it was, the emergency exit of every dishonest man. It's complicated. I said, "I saw you today. Grocery store. Your wife. Your kids. The wedding ring you take off when you come to see me." The warmth drained out of his voice completely, and the next thing he said told me more about him than 18 months ever had. "How long have you been watching me?" As if the crime was my eyes working. I said, "I wasn't watching you. I was buying cereal." He started talking fast then. The excuses came in a flood. They were separated. They were staying together for the kids. The marriage had been over for years. He was going to tell me. He didn't know how. He cared about me. I had to understand. Nothing was simple. Life was messy. Feelings were real. Timing was bad. I let him talk. Because liars reveal themselves when you give them room. He talked and talked until his own excuses started tripping over each other. Then I asked the question that changed everything. "Does she know about me?" He went quiet. "Mark, does your wife know I exist?" He exhaled. "Yes." My stomach turned. "She knows?" "Yes." "And she waved at me in the grocery store." He didn't answer, so I said, "What am I exactly? What was this?" He was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said one sentence I will never forget, quietly, carefully, like he was choosing his words to sound reasonable. "It was an arrangement." An arrangement. That word rearranged the entire relationship in my mind. He thought I had agreed to be scheduled. He thought I had agreed to be hidden. He thought I had agreed to be a slot in his calendar, like I had signed something I had never seen. Like my confusion was inconvenient because in his mind, I should have understood the rules. I said, "I didn't agree to anything." He said, "Lauren." I said, "You used me." He said, "I cared about you." And that made me angrier than almost anything else, because I think, in his own twisted way, he believed that. He believed caring about me made it less cruel. But caring about someone while lying to them is not love. It's not even kindness. It's selfishness with a softer voice. I said no. You cared about what I gave you. There's a difference. He started saying my name again. That tone, the charm tone, the careful tone, the one that had worked for 18 months. And I realized something. If I stayed on the phone one more minute, he would try to pull me back into the fog. He would offer just enough pain to seem human, just enough regret to seem sincere, just enough tenderness to make me question myself. So I ended it. I said, "Lose my number." Then I hung up. And I blocked him everywhere. Phone, email, Instagram, every app, every channel, every door. The next morning, I got a message from an unknown number. It said, "Please stop contacting my husband." I stared at that message for a long time because she knew about me. She had known about me for a while. She had waved at me in the cereal aisle like I was manageable, and she still chose to send that message, like the problem was me, like I had broken into her marriage and stolen something that was fully available to be stolen, like her husband wasn't the one taking off his ring, like he wasn't the one lying to both of us in different ways. I didn't respond. Part of me wanted to. Part of me wanted to write a message so long she would have to sit down to read it. I wanted to tell her the dates, the hotels, the dinners, the nights he stayed with me, the things he said, the promises he made, the version of himself he sold me. I wanted to tell her that if she thought I was the danger, she was protecting the wrong wall of the house. But I didn't answer. Not because she was right, because she wasn't. I didn't answer because I had already spent 18 months inside someone else's lie, and I was not going to spend another day arguing for my place in reality. Maybe she blamed me because blaming him would make her whole life collapse. Maybe the wave in the grocery store was her way of saying, I know, and I'm still here. Maybe seeing me in person near her children made the illusion of control break for a second. Maybe sending that message was easier than admitting her husband had built a system and she had learned to live inside it. I don't know. And the truth is, I stopped trying to understand her, because understanding her was not my responsibility. What I did instead was quieter. I wrote everything down. Every date, every trip, every pattern, every strange silence, every excuse I had swallowed, every moment that had made my body react before my mind caught up. Not for revenge, for myself. Because the only way to stop feeling crazy is to map reality until it makes sense. And when I mapped it, here's what I found. Mark didn't fall into this. He didn't lose control. He didn't make one bad decision and then get trapped by the consequences. He had a schedule. He had windows. He had rules. He had a system. He was organized, which means he could do it again. And the next woman wouldn't necessarily find out in a cereal aisle. She might find out from a photo, a receipt, a child's voice in the background, a wife who already knew. Or she might not find out at all. That thought made me sick. Not because I still loved him. I don't know if what I felt by then was love anymore. It was grief and humiliation and anger and this strange, hollow embarrassment, like I had failed a test everyone else would have passed. A friend asked me afterward, "How did you not see it sooner?" I hated that question. Not because she meant it badly, she didn't, but because it was the question I was already asking myself at 3 in the morning. How did I not see it? How did I explain away so much? How did I mistake limited access for emotional maturity? How did I call distance privacy and call secrecy patience? But eventually I told her the truth. I didn't see it sooner because he never gave me chaos. That's what people don't understand. The dangerous ones don't always come with obvious red flags. They don't always yell. They don't always disappear for weeks. They don't always make you feel unwanted. Sometimes they come with consistency, with soft explanations, with gentle boundaries that only protect them, with just enough intimacy to keep you warm. They train you slowly, quietly, to trust their words more than your instincts. And if you are someone who doesn't want to seem insecure, someone who doesn't want to be controlling, someone who wants to believe love can exist without proof, then you are exactly the kind of person a liar can use. A month later, a friend sent me a screenshot. I didn't ask for it. I wasn't checking his page. I wasn't looking for updates. I had blocked him and I meant it. But she sent it anyway, with one sentence. You need to see this. It was Mark. Instagram. Baseball game. His wife, his kids, all smiling. The caption said, "Grateful for my family." I stared at it for a long time, and I felt something I didn't expect. Not jealousy, not sadness, not even anger, not at first. Clarity, because now I understood exactly what kind of man he was. A man who wanted to be seen as good while doing something cruel in private, A man who could post about gratitude while treating people like compartments. A man who could say, grateful for my family, with the same mouth that said, miss you to me before another fake work trip. A man who could carry two lives, not because he was confused, but because he was confident he could manage both. He almost did. That's the part that matters most. He almost got away with it. Not because I was stupid, not because his wife was blind, not because the signs weren't there. He almost got away with it because he understood something most honest people don't. A calm lie is easier to believe than a dramatic truth. If he had acted nervous, I might have noticed. If he had over-explained, I might have pushed. If he disappeared without warning, I might have walked away. But he didn't. He was calm, he was consistent, he was affectionate when present, he gave me enough to stay and withheld enough to stay safe. That was the design. And I had mistaken the design for a relationship. For weeks, I kept replaying the cereal aisle. Not the confrontation, not the phone call, not even the word arrangement. The cereal aisle. The boy asking for dinosaur cereal, the little girl's hand on the cart, the wife's calm wave, Mark's forehead kiss. The ordinary domestic life he stepped back into after leaving my apartment. That was the image that stayed, because it showed me the full truth in a way no confession could. He had not been choosing between two lives, he had one life, and I was the place he went when he wanted to feel like he had another one. That realization hurt more than the cheating, because cheating sounds passionate in a messy, destructive way. This wasn't passion, this was scheduling, this was management. This was a man deciding how much truth each woman was allowed to have. His wife got the house, the children, the public photos, the baseball games, the grocery store mornings. I got hotel excuses, soft rules, and stolen nights dressed up as romance. And the worst part was that I had been grateful for scraps because he presented them like gifts. When someone gives you limited access with enough tenderness, you can start mistaking the limitation for intimacy. You can start believing that being chosen in private is still being chosen. It isn't. A man who loves you makes room for you in his life, not just in his schedule, his life. There's a difference. A schedule can hide you, a life has to include you. He doesn't manage your access, he doesn't keep you away from every person who could confirm the truth, he doesn't create rules that only protect him, he doesn't make you feel guilty for wanting normal things. A phone call in the morning, a real address, a holiday plan, a photo, an introduction, a simple answer. And when someone's life is complicated, but your gut is perfectly certain something is wrong, that's not overthinking, that's information. Your body is not always trying to sabotage you. Sometimes it is trying to save you from the story your heart is desperate to believe. I ignored mine for 18 months. Not because I didn't feel it, I did. I felt it in the quiet moments, when he didn't call, when he avoided certain questions, when he turned not yet into a lifestyle, when every reasonable request somehow became too much, too soon, too complicated. I felt it. I just kept explaining it away because the truth would have required me to lose him. And sometimes we lie to ourselves because the lie lets us keep the person a little longer. But the cost is brutal because while you're protecting the illusion, the truth is still happening, whether you look at it or not. After it ended, people expected me to be dramatic, to expose him, to message his wife again, to post screenshots, to make sure everyone knew exactly what he had done. And I'm not judging anyone who would. I understand the impulse. There is something deeply insulting about being used quietly and then expected to heal quietly too. But I didn't want revenge to become another room in his house. I wanted out, fully out. So I chose silence. Not weak silence, not helpless silence, chosen silence. The kind that says, you don't get access to my reaction anymore. I blocked him, I deleted the photos, I changed the places I associated with him. I stopped going to that grocery store for a while, which felt ridiculous, but necessary. And slowly, the shame started separating from me. That was important.
Because at first, shame sticks to the wrong person. I felt shame for believing him, shame for loving him, shamed that no one else had seen me, and waved like I was part of something everyone understood except me. But shame belongs to the person who lies, not the person who trusted. Trusting someone is not a moral failure. Lying to someone is. I know that now. I didn't always. Some nights I still think about the next woman. I hope there isn't one. But men like Mark don't usually stop because they're sorry. They stop when the system stops working. And even then, some of them just build a better system. That's why I'm telling this story. Not because I want pity, I don't. Not because I think every private person is hiding a family, they're not. But because secrecy and privacy are not the same thing. Privacy protects peace, secrecy protects deception. And if you are always the one being asked to understand, to wait, to be patient, to not ask, to not need clarity, then at some point you have to ask yourself, who benefits from my silence? Because in my relationship with Mark, the answer was never me. So here's what I know now. Love does not make you feel like a visitor in someone's life. Love does not keep you outside every locked door and call that boundaries. Love does not give you tenderness only in the spaces where no one else can see it. And love does not require you to ignore the part of yourself that keeps whispering, something is wrong. That whisper matters. Listen to it. Because I didn't. For 18 months, I didn't. And one Saturday morning, buying cereal in the most ordinary moment of my week, reality found me anyway. So let me ask you, if you found out you were the work trip, the carefully scheduled secret in someone else's marriage, what would you do? Would you confront him? Would you tell his wife everything? Would you disappear without a word and let him live with the silence? Or would you do something else entirely? Tell me in the comments because I know people are going to disagree on this one. And if you have ever ignored a gut feeling that later turned out to be right, then you already know the real lesson here. Sometimes your instincts notice the truth long before your heart is ready to admit it. If this story pulled you in, subscribe to the channel. And before you go, watch the next story on the screen, especially if you like stories about workplace betrayal, hidden affairs, and people who thought they could get away with living two lives. Because here, one secret always leads to another.